Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, the top brass of Reserve Bank, prominent bankers, economists, money market experts, and of course, people from the press. Welcome to Who Moved My Interest Rate? Well, actually, the current governor is trying to figure out who is not moving interest rate and why. But we will come to that in a little while. In fact, we will come to who moved the interest rate and who didn't let Dr. Subbarao move the interest rate in just a bit. Let me, in the spirit, in the tone set by the MC, start with a quote from the book itself, Who Moved My Interest Rate. That really is my first question, Dr. Subbarao. I'm reading an accusation from the finance minister of the day when you were governor. This quote came from Mr. Chidambaram. We can forget the context, but the accusation is very interesting. And a lot of people here are outsiders to RBI who have come into the RBI fold, so the question actually applies to them as well. Mr. Chidambaram's accusation is, Mr. Chidambaram's accusation is, all of you who enter the Reserve Bank laterally have become hostage to the technocrats in Reserve Bank. And therefore, the government feels it necessary to bring in flesh blood. I mean, how is it? Is it really that Reserve Bank does something to you and you'll become hostage? What is this magic in Reserve Bank that the moment you set foot, you are fighting their tough battles and kind of are seen as an RBI man? Does Reserve Bank have that magic of converting you? Is it a fair accusation?
That's okay. Let me think how to answer that question. Mr. Chidambaram's concern was that many people, such as myself, would come in, were taking an independent position, not necessarily always in tune with the government, and he was uncomfortable with the Reserve Bank under my leadership taking a position that was not what he wanted. And this was in that context. I think it was more in the nature of expressing his disenchantment with the Reserve Bank asserting its autonomy. There's also something to do with this institution, about the professionalism, the integrity, the independent thinking that's here. I think it's all a reflection of that. I certainly was influenced by the Reserve Bank's professionalism, yes.
Okay, well, I wanted to extend the question to an outsider as well. Mr. Sinha, do you think, I'm referring to the SEBI chairman, Mr. Sinha, do you think the Reserve Bank behaves like that? You know, the technocrats say, oh, we know best, don't mess with us, we know our field better. Is this sense about, that is the accusation that comes from the government, in this case, the finance minister. Reserve Bank doesn't allow anyone in its turf.
Your question is certainly a surprise for me. I thought I would be part of the audience and enjoy the discussions. Having dealt with RBI, not directly here, but from the government and in other places that I have worked with, I find that RBI has a very, very strong sense of professionalism and a sense of duty. And the culture that it has generated has served this country extremely well through different periods of time. I would like to add, however, that there have been periods when people outside RBI, being the government or elsewhere, have thought that RBI has not been able to live up to the demands or changing demands of the situation. But that, I think, is exactly the reason why we have so much of faith and confidence in RBI. Because they are not expected to change their views every now and then. They have to weigh things and then come to a final conclusion. So I would applaud the professionalism which has been shown by people in RBI.
Okay, thank you, sir. Tamilda, you don't agree with the accusation?
No, I mean, I don't. I refrain from commenting. Actually, to be honest enough, sitting here, I feel like this gentleman called Larry Fortensky, Elizabeth Taylor's seventh husband by eighth wedding. The $1 million wedding, 1991, lasted for 5 years. And on the honeymoon night, I think that was Michael Jackson's one of those farmhouse, he knew exactly what he was expected to do, but he didn't know how to be different from the past 6 husbands on that. So here, I mean, what new, can I ask a question here? One thing probably, you know, all through the book you have been, the recurrent thing is communication, how RBI should communicate. But you have not communicated, or probably I did not get it, why did you write the book? This is something unprecedented. There have been biographies by RBI, former RBI governors, where governorship is part of the book. Here, within less than 3 years, you come out with a book. You signed a scroll, which is an oath of secrecy. And then you come out with something. In the West we have seen this, but something unprecedented. What prompted you? Is just to show your irritation, annoyance, frustration, dismay, this is all your words, with the government, or sort of defense, because repeatedly you are saying that what I have done in retrospect people can judge, but I made every decision when the data available at this point of time. You repeatedly emphasize that. Is it a sort of self-defense, or is it just for fun?
Writing the book?
Yeah. Why?
Okay. Let me give a longish answer to that. I became governor on the 5th of September 2008. 7th of September, Franny and Freddie. 9th of September, Countrywide. 10th of September, Merrill Lynch. 11th, AIG. 16th, Lehman Brothers. Big global financial crisis. India was affected too, and the story going around was that this new governor came and he brought on the crisis. So everywhere I went, people were asking, you know, sir, when will the crisis be over, as if I knew. But I used to say, oh, okay, if I brought on the crisis will end when my term is over. And for good measure, I used to tell them, you know, when my term would be over. And in the week after I left the RBI, the crisis ended. Okay, the economy got back on track, the rupee stabilized, inflation was on a downward trend, growth was on an upward trend. So if there's one prophecy in which I wish I'd been wrong, it was that. But that's not to be my legacy. No, because she said belabored humor, I'm just telling you that. Okay, so my part of the motivation for writing the book really was to communicate the challenges and dilemmas of the governor during what I thought was a very difficult period. We had the crisis in the first year of my first 1.5 years. Then we had a very unusual episode of inflation combined with growth moderating. It's a toxic combination for any central bank, particularly for India, that we had this moderating growth and very persistent, stubborn inflation for nearly 2.5 years. And in the final year of my tenure, we had the exchange rate massive, volatile, and very rapid adjustment of the exchange rate. So I wanted to communicate all those dilemmas and challenges of the governor. There was also another motivation for writing the book, which was apart from the challenges and dilemmas, I also wanted to demystify the Reserve Bank. All of you heard me use that while I was here. Demystifying the Reserve Bank is important, of course, for people to understand the connection between what the Reserve Bank does and their everyday lives, like the prices they pay in the market, the interest that they earn on a fixed deposit, the interest they have to pay if they take a housing loan, what sort of a service they get from a bank, is their money in the bank safe, how much foreign exchange can they take out if they want to send a child for education abroad. So all of these are people's everyday concerns. On the other hand, there's this RBI doing something and they don't understand the connection between their everyday lives and what the RBI does. So I thought I should make that connection and explain to people. But there was also another motivation for my wanting to demystify the Reserve Bank. That motivation was that there is a very negative stereotype about the Reserve Bank in the larger public, that this is a very rigid, unbending, monolithic institution far removed from the realities of India. If you'll allow me a little bit of time, I want to tell you a story that I wrote there. When I was first posted Sub-Collector Parvatipuram in my first posting 40 years ago in Srikakulam district of Andhra Pradesh, mid-70s, the Naxalite movement had come first out, the first place in India to be affected outside of West Bengal, where the Naxalite movement was Srikakulam district. And I was posted as sub-collector there, and by the time I went there, the Naxalite movement was on the wane, and our priority at that time was to rebuild the lives of tribals, provide them livelihood support, so that they're weaned away from tribal influence. So my job as sub-collector was to go from bank branch to bank branch and canvass loans for tribals. Branch managers would come up with all sorts of excuses for denying loans. No offense meant to top bankers here, but they would say tribals not credit worthy, all sorts of things. And the final thing, when all excuses run out, the final thing they say is RBI rules don't permit. Okay, that's the thing. You can't say anything about it. RBI rules don't permit. In course of my career over 40 years, I saw that there were very many negative stereotypes about the Reserve Bank. And I thought I should correct them, demystify the Reserve Bank in order to communicate the right message about the Reserve Bank.
Well, just to continue with that, it's possible that everyone will not be reading the whole book. If you want
Except
to pick
you.
up one, I let it try for you. If you want to pick up one chapter as the soul of the book, as something you really like, which would it be? I can tell you my personal favorite is your chapter, Walking Alone.
Okay, go ahead.
So what's your favorite chapter here?
I can't say favorite chapter. The one I struggled most writing was the rupee tantrums. I wrote that first and kept revisiting it all through the 8-month period that I was writing because I wanted to get the message across. But I can't say favorite because some of the later chapters came relatively easily when I didn't have to do any fact checking. But you had something to say about Walking Alone, or that's about it?
No.
I wanted to speak about Walking Alone, but go ahead.
Yes, no, please finish. Essentially, you were talking about this.
Lata's favorite chapter is to be known to everyone.
No, well, I wanted to know, what is there something in the Reserve Bank which gave you the courage to be able to take on the very tough criticism that you got from the finance minister? I mean, statements like this, growth is as much a concern as inflation. If the government has to walk alone to face the challenge of growth, we will walk alone. Very clearly saying that I am so angry that you have not cut rates. What did you get from the Reserve Bank that encouraged you, empowered you to take on?
What UK mentioned earlier, what I mentioned earlier, which is that this is a very professional institution, has served the country for the last 80 years with dignity, distinction, and great reputation for integrity. So you know that when you're heading this institution, you are doing the right thing, and you follow the dharma of the RBI. That's I know that's not a very type of answer that you're expecting, but yes.
Whatever is your answer, sir.
Whatever, yeah.
Well, actually, in this tussle between Finance Ministry and Reserve Bank, often the people who are in the tussle are first on the Finance Ministry side, and then they come over to the Reserve Bank. There are many people who have done this change. When you are at the Finance Ministry end, don't you see the Reserve Bank's point of view? I mean, why is it that you're over there?
Okay.
And go
Seeing
ahead.
the point of view is a different thing from pressurizing. Like Mr. Chidambaram said at several forums in relation to this book you were there yesterday, it's you can have different points of view. It's perfectly possible, indeed necessary, for the Ministry of Finance and the Reserve Bank to have different points of view. Okay, the question really is that do you have the institutional mechanisms to manage your differences, and should the differences persist, are you able to keep them behind closed doors? That's the important thing.
I'm asking you this because, I mean, of a very pointed issue you raise, that the Reserve Bank would raise rates and the Finance Minister would meet bankers, and the message would be very clear, don't raise rates.
Right.
Now, this clearly was impeding monetary transmission. As Finance Ministry officials, was there no effort to, rein in this lack of transmission? Why is it that the Reserve Bank doesn't get help from what is a very erudite group over there, Finance Ministry officials?
See, the communication between the Finance Minister and his staff is somewhat privileged, right? You cannot talk about it here. But certainly the Finance Minister, depending on his personality style, management style, sometimes consults his senior officers, sometimes he takes a view of his own. Okay. So,
If I will just continue for a minute, when this, if the RBI will not help, the government has to walk alone. When that statement was made, the current governor was the chief economic advisor. Didn't you protest, sir, on behalf of the Reserve Bank? I mean, inflation was running at 10%. He had kept interest rates at 8%, and the finance minister was pressuring him. Didn't you tell him, don't make a statement like walk alone?
I think we should recognize the governor's.
We're getting to the region of privileged conversation.
Yeah.
But I think I won't answer that because the conversation I had with the finance minister both before and after that statement should remain privileged.
Sir, I didn't get you. The statement, the conversation.
I had a conversation with the finance minister both before and after he made the statement, but I won't reveal what I said.
Okay, I think you have revealed a lot, sir.
Raghuram, no, enough has been spoken about the tussle between ministry and all. But I am just asking you, could this be one of the reasons why, or is it historical thing? Because repeatedly you spoke about your hotline with Prime Minister. Now, Reserve Bank of India by constitution, by its act, is answerable to Parliament through Finance Ministry. But you have in every occasion before every monetary policy, you met PM first and then Finance Minister. You were appointed by PM. Your second term also came from PMO, not from Finance Ministry. Now, imagine a situation in Reserve Bank of India. There is a deputy governor in charge of monetary policy. Now, if the ED in charge of monetary policy has a hotline with the governor and deputy governor is bypassed or just kept informed, how would this gentleman react? So, if I were the Finance Minister, probably I would have also not taken it well that the RBI governor, instead of discussing with me, why does he go to PM? Could that be one of the reasons for this tussle?
No, I don't think so. I think you're reading too much into it.
Okay.
Because governors before me have met the Prime Minister, I've met the Prime Minister. I've, given my nature, I've perhaps made it more systematic because Prime Minister Manmohan Singh told me that, you do come and see me. And I said, okay, if I have to go and see him periodically, it might be a good point to see that every quarterly policy I go and see him. Not necessarily the case that I saw him first and then the Finance Minister. In fact, I also wrote in the book that every time the Prime Minister would ask, have you settled with the Finance Minister?
Yes.
So it's not as if he was trying to establish a channel with me by passing the Finance Minister. He actually made sure that I was following the right channels. Okay. So I think reading some conspiracy theories into that, I think is a bit, what is actually a happenstance. Is too much. Yeah.
Actually, Dr. Subbarao, a diametrically opposite question. It's the Prime Minister who comes out looking like the good guy. There are three instances where you have referred to Dr. Manmohan Singh. One, when after you took over, it was the immediate aftermath of the Lehman crisis. I'm sorry, I'm not able to point to the page, but they were all the ministers, all of them using the crisis to make the Reserve Bank give some sop or the other. Some dispensation or the other, and you, gently kept all of them aside and stood your ground. And the Prime Minister patted your back, almost as if to say that you have done a great job. And secondly, he was rooting for your reappointment, and it almost, why almost? It came from him before it came from the Finance Ministry. And finally, even when he bid you goodbye, he repeatedly told you that he wants you to, or he would oblige if you wanted any other position in the government. Was he a major factor in creating a thaw between an otherwise tumultuous relation with the Finance Ministry? He simply understood the Reserve Bank better?
He did understand the Reserve Bank, but he also understood the government, and he had his own political compulsions, like I write about some of them also. For example, about the Reserve Bank commenting on fiscal deficit. He was clearly uncomfortable with the Reserve Bank commenting on that. So the intention was not to make some people heroes of the book, some people villains of the book. I think Mr. Chidambaram would have said that it's the media, which is projecting some people as villains and some as
My
heroes.
question was not to make him a
Right.
hero. My question simply was, did he intervene to
No, I don't think he went that
settle
far. Sorry,
differences?
my apologies for that, but no. I don't think it came to any situation where he had to actually intervene to resolve differences or whatever. He did not act, I don't think he was activist in that sense of resolving differences between the Reserve Bank and the Finance Ministry.
Looking back, I think the smoothest relation between the Reserve Bank and the Finance Ministry, and this is of course because the previous governor did not write his book, but it looks like the most peaceful relation was when Manmohan Singh was Finance Minister and Rangarajan was governor, probably because the Finance Minister was a former RBI governor. So is that the recipe for peaceful relation, that the Finance Minister should be a former governor?
Or the governor should become the Finance Minister.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a separate question, but before that, just curiosity, did Chidambaram read the book before it gone to print?
Oh yes, most certainly. Thanks for asking that question. Some media have quoted me as saying that Mr. Chidambaram gave the endorsement, very, very magnanimous, of course, even before he read the book. That's completely wrong, and perhaps I miscommunicated or the media misquoted me. I requested him whether he would write an endorsement. He very readily agreed, and then he said, ask your publishers to send a draft to me. They sent the draft, and then after reading the draft, he gave the endorsement.
Okay. Now the question, you ended the book with the 4 challenges before Reserve Bank of India, and I'll just pick up one challenge when you spoke about more transparency and accountability. Now you said the Reserve Bank of India extremely transparent and accountable. I have a slightly different point of view, and I'm quoting a couple of agencies, outside agencies. Of course, this is a little dated observation. One is this US think tank called National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER. It says Indian Central Bank is the least transparent central bank in South Asia. IMF also said it in February 2008, spoke about non-transparency. And now I had seen the annual report of Sri Lankan Central Bank, which has more information than RBI provides. Like you don't give any cash flow statement, you don't give any provision statement, you don't give any breakup of foreign assets or where is this. And look at Sri Lankan balance sheet, everything, what kind of derivatives, what are the credit risk, everything is there. So, and you have an August board, but we don't know, never the minutes are published, what happened to the board discussion. And finally, that FSLRC recommendation or suggestion that RBI should be subjected to a CAG audit. Would you react to these are the statements and this question of mine? Should RBI be subjected to CAG, and should it be more transparent, or you think that?
No, I did say that the Reserve Bank should be more transparent. Okay, I think there are 2 different issues. Reserve Bank becoming more transparent and Reserve Bank coming under the audit of the CAG. I had the same motivation as you in writing that sentence, which is that the Reserve Bank should become more transparent, because after I stepped down, I've been living in Singapore, traveling around, and I meet these young financial sector professionals in very informal settings, some restaurant or some on the street or in the metro train or whatever, and they recognize me sometimes and then say, why did you do this? So we didn't understand this. And I say, my God, something that went under my signature or went in the Reserve Bank when I was governor, I didn't pay so much attention, but there is all these people, running into thousands who pay a lot of attention to every number, every statement, every nuance that the Reserve Bank puts out. I wish I had realized it, not that I would have done anything differently, but I did realize that there is a constituency that sets enormous weight by what the Reserve Bank does, what the Reserve Bank says, how it says it. So I thought the Reserve Bank should put greater thought, attention to communicating what it does in order to have send beyond the message with people who matter. Okay, that's the motivation for writing that sentence. As far as coming under the CAG audit, I don't think that will be an advisable thing. You know, I'm saying this on my feet as it were. It's not something that I've thought about it. But I know that the US Federal Reserve is resisting pressures for it to come under audit of the American equivalent to the CAG. I don't know what it's called. The Reserve Bank is more than a regulator. It's the monetary authority. It's set up under an act of parliament. I don't think it'll be advisable to treat this like any other public sector body, like any other regulator, and bring it under the audit of the CAG. I'm not for a moment suggesting that there should be no watchdog institution auditing the Reserve Bank, as it were. There should be. But there should be a distinction made between how the Reserve Bank is watchdogged as distinct from other institutions.
Okay, actually, that brought me to a question which I had not prepared. You know, let me come back to that issue, the accusation that the Reserve Bank acts as, you know, protects its turf, converts the people who come from outside to its own point of view. The Reserve Bank has resisted the appellate authority repeatedly. I mean, why would you? It's not answerable to practically anyone except Parliament. Where do you stand on that? That's also one of the FSLRC suggestions. Having an appellate authority.
See, every position that the Reserve Bank takes is not necessarily position to defend its autonomy. Autonomy is an issue in certain domains, but not everything. So if the Reserve Bank has reservations against certain recommendations of the FSLRC, that is because of its own thinking. That's not necessarily because it wants to protect its autonomy. Autonomy is important, for example, in monetary policy, in regulation, but in a lot of other things that the Reserve Bank does, autonomy is not autonomy question does not arise. Okay. Now about this, what you're referring to, appellate authority. You know, what the Reserve Bank does should be subject to some appeal process, or somebody's, somebody applying judgment on this. And I believe there's already a channel for Reserve Bank's decisions being contested in the high courts, right? I don't think a separate channel where there is an appellate authority will be good for the efficiency of regulation. If every decision of the Reserve Bank as a regulator is challenged, I think it will hurt the credibility of regulation and indeed hurt financial stability as well.
You have actually recommended that, like in the US, there should be well televised or well publicized, debates or the questioning of the Reserve Bank governor by parliamentary committees should be a matter of, publicly available information, should be in the public domain,
should be
or
a
should be actually
mechanism,
televised.
institutional mechanism.
Yes. Would that be the best solution to, in a sense, make the Reserve Bank answerable?
It is not an answer to that appellate authority. Those are two different things, right? But I would still believe that an institutionalized, structured process whereby the governor goes before the committee of the parliament, like in the US and perhaps in the UK, and gives a statement on the entire domain of actions, policies, outcomes of the Reserve Bank, fields questions from the members of parliament, will be a good thing to do. Even now the governor goes and deputy governors go before the standing committee of the parliament, but on specific issues. But it is not a calendar event. What I'm suggesting is that it must be a calendar event covering the entire domain of the Reserve Bank, where the governor goes and renders autonomy.
And it should be in the public domain.
It should be in the public domain. We could, when we're designing it, we could think about it, whether it should be live or whether it could be some filtered messages that could be put in the public domain. Apart from the fact that it gives Reserve Bank an avenue to render accountability, I also believe that a mechanism like that would protect the Reserve Bank from the encroachment or assaults on its autonomy by the political executive. Once you're rendering accountability to the legislature, you are to that extent firewalled from the executive. I think that's a safeguard.
Can I invite the governor's view on this? I mean, this is done in the United States. You must have seen how other countries do
yes,
it. Is that a good idea?
We have had, following some of these ideas, now a discussion with the Parliamentary Standing Committee, where we have asked the Parliamentary Standing Committee to set up at least 2 meetings a year, where the governor will go and depose in front of the committee. We just had one a month ago, where I and 2 deputy governors went before the standing committee and answered a variety of questions without them calling us. We set it up with them, and we had this very frank and free interaction. So yes, we are on that path now.
And it might be available to the public. Is that also being contemplated?
Well, I would think that the deliberations of the committee follow parliamentary rules, where they are supposed to be sort of within closed doors. I am told that there was some communication between the committee members and the press. So the press did hear about what happened inside the committee, but that was not from us. I think we follow the parliamentary rules and are bound by that. However, I don't see why the statement by the governor, opening statement by the governor to the committee, could not be made public in future occasions, but that's for the future governor to decide.
No, but in the US, the entire debate is in the public domain. You all are not reaching anywhere there in your
No, that is for Parliament to agree to open it up. It's not our decision. Our main issue was to communicate with Parliament so that there is a sense of responsibility of the Reserve Bank to Parliament, and they asked us a variety of questions, including some tough ones, and we responded. So it is part of the process now.
Actually, we suggested that to the FSLRC, and it was not part of their recommendations. I checked with some members of the FSLRC when I was writing the book, and they said we did not put that in there because some members of the FSLRC felt that it does not accord with our constitution.
Yes.
I don't know what problem they had, but yeah, it would have been a good
you've
thing.
mentioned
Yeah.
Dr. Subbarao, I mean, I think I'm saying the same thing in a different way, but no, this bureaucrat parachuted into the central bank, and yours is a unique case again. In the past, we had finance secretaries coming to central bank, but through different routes. They are in planning commission and others. There's a gap. In this case, directly you came to this. Now, one theory, of course, is the Trojan horse theory, which is you are a finance ministry man and all, you turn into a rebel. But your colleagues in the bureaucracy said that there's the other side of it. You are very inflexible in your approach. When you came to this side, interaction with you was little difficult. That's what they said, and they quoted some of the Reserve Bank of India board meetings. I will not get into the details, where you had exchanges which are not very pleasant and all. So, do you buy that theory that there should have been like finance secretary coming straight away from ministry from North Block here, and is it better than having a gap, or gap is better than this?
No, I don't think you can stereotype that into a formula. A gap is better. Cooling off period is better, or being inflexible or being judged as inflexible or flexible by your own colleagues who are on the other side. I think is depends, you're judged by where you're sitting, and it's a matter of personality. I don't think I don't think you should read a pattern into it, that somebody came as finance secretary, as governor, and therefore he became so inflexible that he was not listening to the government's point of view. That I think is more unique to a set of circumstances, a set of people, rather than something that fits into a formula.
Actually, isn't that similar to what I was also saying? Everyone thinks that once you come into Reserve Bank, you kind of start becoming a RBI man and listening to everything that you just
no. But once you come into SEBI like UK Sinha has, don't you become a SEBI man?
No, actually, I forgot.
Unlike Mundra has come from a commercial bank, as you see, not an RBI man now.
Yes, that's true. No, but didn't Dr. Rajan also recommend first appellate authority, and then once you came to RBI, you didn't want it? Even you, I think, are getting converted by the technocrats in RBI.
Look, the truth is that when you come to the RBI, you have a very different set of objectives and responsibilities than when you're at the finance ministry. I think we tend to attribute a whole lot of motives on either side, but the objectives and the responsibilities of each side are a little different. Here, longer term, more focus on stability. There, shorter term, more focus on growth. And those differences in objectives can create differences in opinion about certain issues. Yes, there are always issues of turf and so on, and obviously the turf you defend there is different from the turf you defend here. But there are also genuine differences in objectives which result in different opinions about the same policy. That said, there's a lot of commonality which is not so exciting for the press, which you don't focus on, but there are some differences which you highlight. I think by and large, the relationship between the central bank and the finance ministry, the unexciting part of the relationship is a significant amount of cooperation.
Let's talk something which you did not write about it. I know you have one thing, I'll not touch that, but you add to this and all. Say, smaller things I thought in the part of reforms is this, like you spoke about savings bank deregulation. It's another matter that majority of the banks have stuck to 4%.
Yeah,
I'm not getting into that. But you also waive this penalty on repayment of loans, which is not, I think it's a very major thing that you did from the consumer's point of view. You did bring the foreign banks on a level playing field as far as priority sector lendings are concerned, 40%. You didn't mention that. You also didn't mention the entire bank licensing, which after a decade you opened up. And also I'm curious to know, why did you take so long? Because the tussle with the ministry, and you were drafting because you wanted to keep the large corporations out of it, and ministry was in favor of it. That's why you avoided this. Once again, why this frustration you went out? Is that the reason? Or you forgot about it?
Licensing a missing chapter.
Okay, what is your missing chapter?
No, you go ahead with this, sir.
After the book came out, I got some people emailed me saying this is not there, this is not there, and that's actually quite a long list of what I omitted writing. And frankly, this book is the product of some stream of consciousness. It's not as if I figured out and I structured it and I said 17 chapters and 350 pages. I told you first I tested myself by writing what I thought would be the most difficult chapter, which is the rupee exchange rate issue, and then wrote other chapters, more substantive chapters. The rest came as a flow, and as I told you, I didn't keep any notes, so it was just picking up from what my recall and from the media clippings and speeches and reports of that time and whatever stories I could make out. So the only thing that the criteria was that I needed to have a story to say. Okay, that if there's something that's already in the public domain and there's nothing I can say, there's no nuance or anything that I can add, I should leave that out. Like people ask me, why have you not written about NPS? Certainly it's a burning issue, and I'm partly responsible for the problem and hopefully partly responsible also for the solution. But I didn't write about it. So lots of people have asked me, why did you not write about it? So you asked me bank licenses. Some of these things, yes, I had stories to say, for example, about bank licenses.
Tell us.
Yeah, but this is not, maybe you have to wait for the next book. Okay, yeah. But there are stories.
So you have another book in mind?
No, I haven't. Actually, what I wanted to write, they very desperately wanted to write, was a chapter on my meetings with chief ministers. Because I think across 18 states I met 27 chief ministers or something like that. And every meeting is unique its own, in its own way, and has a lot of interest about some current leaders of the country, different states, etc. I wanted to write that, but then the only reason I restrained myself was because I thought like it'll be eaten away by that. The book will take, somebody give tea in a broken cup, the governor writing about that. Somebody fed him, on 20 plates. So I thought it'll take away from the substance of the book. I didn't write that, but yeah, that would have been very interesting as well. So what I'm trying to say is that lots of things I left out. Some of them I should have included. Some of them perhaps didn't meet my criteria.
Okay. Well, looks like you already have 2 chapters for your next book. But you took away my next question, Dr. Subbarao. My question was exactly that. Why didn't you write about NPAs? That is a serious missing chapter because it is the big theme now. And I'll tell you, there were several decisions that you took. One was this one-time restructuring which you allowed with just 5% provisioning. And you yourself seem to have realized in the end that it had to be brought down, and the Mahapatra committee brought it down by April 2015. I think that it had to be wound up. Were you under pressure to give this restructuring? Was it the Reserve Bank's own idea?
No.
Again, you'll have to...
Pressure from whom?
From the ministry. Because at that time, growth was such a big ideology and such a all-consuming idea that were you pressured by the political...
See, on what issues I was pressured, I've written in the book. Okay, so you have to presume that on issues that I've not written about, there is no pressure. In fact, I didn't write about NPA, so the question of pressure or no pressure does not arise. But what I do want to say very clearly, and I think it's important to correct the record, is that no decision of mine or of the Reserve Bank on my watch was influenced by any pressure. Whatever decision we took was the best professional judgment of this great institution. So, yes, there was pressure, but to imply that any decision was changed or there was some succumbing to pressure is certainly very, very wrong.
No, you could have been convinced. For instance, you all increased the exposure allowed to infrastructure. Now, was that because you were convinced by the government that this needed help?
Actually, one of the motivations for writing the book, actually, which I didn't mention in my long earlier answer, is that in public policy there is no black and white. There's always a grey, right? It's a judgment call. Just because the government says something, you do not disregard it because you've got to be autonomous. You certainly listen to the government with a great amount of respect and open mind. Whatever they say, you do. So some of your thinking might in fact be changed or influenced by what the government says. This is the real world that you're serving, right?
So was the restructuring decision similarly?
I can't recall the exact restructuring decision you're talking about, but in terms of support for financing of infrastructure, okay, all the relaxation or the regulatory forbearance we had to give for that. Yes, certainly it is influenced by not just the government, but talking to a lot of people. But not all of that is pressure.
Dr. Subbarao, I'm just closing the loop. I have one more question after this because we won't have time. But before that, on communication again, slightly different tone. This Governor Dr. Rajan, in various forums, he does not talk about anything which actually moves the market in terms of bond yield or rupee. He restrains himself. But he talks about, say, make in India or make for India, or talk about intolerance, so on and so forth. Now, in your idea of perfect communication of a central banker, do these subjects fit? Should the governor talk about all this or should it refrain? Because apparently, I mean not apparently, let us not couch our this thing. There have been controversies, stoked discussions on these issues.
I don't think there should be any code of conduct about what subjects the governor can talk about. It should be left to the discretion of the governor. I don't think it's advisable to compartmentalize him to talk about just issues relating to central banking. If a governor chooses to confine himself to strictly issues within central banking, that's his privilege and his preference. But to say that the governor should not go beyond central banking, I think is ill-advised. If the governor is indeed a public intellectual, as Governor Rajan is, I think it will be good, appropriate, advisable, desirable that he speak about those issues, because the governor does enjoy a certain amount of recognition in the public. And if he is able to communicate on some of those larger issues, using the gravitas of his office, I think it's contributing to the larger public good.
Your thoughts, Governor, on this? Well, actually, I wanted to come back to the the main, what I would think is the meat of the book in terms of autonomy. After all, that is the title of the book, Who Moved by Interest Rates. it, is the Reserve Bank
That's not,
seriously?
title of the book is not about autonomy, but go ahead.
Okay.
I won't interrupt
Okay.
you.
Well, it sounds
Yeah.
provocatively so. It's a very nice title, I must say. It's really very
And
endearing.
in some, I must say this, in some bookshops, they have categorized it under self-help books.
And you hope that you have given a gift to your barber, this book.
Yes.
Okay, that's a very cute incident you refer to. Your barber,
Yes.
your barber asking you about interest rate cuts. That's a hair-raising experience for you. Well, actually, does the Reserve Bank tend to use this autonomy shield to even ward off very legitimate questions?
No, I don't think so. Like, for example?
Like, for example, the government trying to tell you about deputy governors. Now, I know that this, in the case of Mrs. Thorat, clearly had the background of the Bank of Rajasthan case. But it is fairly legitimate otherwise, if this case didn't exist, to say that, okay, why are you promoting a person above 60? Why don't you give a new ED a chance? It's a fair, intervention on the part of the finance ministry.
You must
to
allow
make.
me to give a slightly...
Therefore, why are you looking for
yeah.
ghosts, perhaps, where there are none?
No, please allow me to give a recent response to that. The prerogative of appointing the deputy governors and the governor rests with the government under law. There is no question about it. There are rules, procedures, eligibility criteria which have to be met. There is no question about it. When a fresh deputy governor is chosen, there is a procedure, we choose somebody. When it comes to reappointing an incumbent deputy governor, there were no rules earlier. Finance Minister Chidambaram had actually framed rules for appointment and reappointment of incumbent deputy governors. According to those rules and consistent with those rules, some recommendations of mine for reappointment of deputy governors were accepted by the Finance Minister. According to those rules and consistent with those rules, some recommendations of mine regarding reappointment of deputy governors were not accepted. So there was some inconsistency in the decision making or the behavior of the government with relation to this, because I thought integrity demanded that you be consistent in your actions. If some of your actions, some of your recommendations are accepted and some not, and then that has to be seen in the context of all the conversations you've had, etc., you have to put two and two together. Nobody tells you that I've denied this reappointment because I'm trying to get back at you, right? So you put that two and two together and draw these inferences. But I don't believe, I for one am not saying that every recommendation of the governor regarding everything should be accepted, but I thought the cases that I wrote about were by way of paying a price for the Reserve Bank, doing what it thought should be done in public interest.
No, I'm saying this because it's not, this came from other media observer and indeed even one government official, not surprisingly, that the Reserve Bank is hypersensitive about autonomy and hyperventilates about it. And
which central bank is not? Which central bank is not?
I don't know, you would know better.
No, every central bank is. In fact, yesterday in the Delhi discussion, Gemini Bhagwati raised that issue, that the question that came up after the crisis was that has central bank autonomy gone too far? I am aware that that question did come up. I'm sure Shyamala or Usha and Khan, etc. are aware of that. That question did come up in international discussions. But the point is that in the 9 years since the crisis, or 8 years since the crisis, not one central bank has lost any bit of its autonomy, which is testimonial to the importance of preserving the central bank's autonomy. In spite of such anger, acrimony against central bank autonomy, some public intellectuals, politicians raising that issue, that central bank autonomy has gone to the other extreme, nothing has happened, which gives me to believe that this perhaps is the best practice. That people are scared about taking away the autonomy of the central bank.
I'll just continue with that. Sorry. Well, for instance, I'll tell you one instance of hyperventilating about something or being hypersensitive. The FSDC, you have a detailed chapter on it or a sub-chapter on it. And I remember even in the media, we all thought that this was a big threat to autonomy. As it happened, when there was a run on the rupee, a huge stability issue, the guys who took the decisions were Reserve Bank and Finance Ministry. It was not really an FSDC issue. The decision had to be taken on the ball, and the same guys took the decision. So, are we really seeing ghosts sometimes where there are none?
It's quite possible. I wouldn't put that beyond the realm of possibility. But you also have to be conscious that the FSDC can become a platform for the government and everyone else to creep into areas of Reserve Bank's domain which should be autonomous. If you can actually compartmentalize that this is stability issue, this is development issue, this is monetary policy issue, you can have an FSDC, but it's just not possible, right? There are no Chinese walls between them. What is a financial stability issue? What is a monetary policy issue? What is an exchange rate issue? It's difficult to compartmentalize them. So my fear is that in a set of circumstances where the FSDC is peopled by ministers, regulators, governors, where integrity levels are looser than the best, it's quite possible that FSDC could become a platform for eroding the autonomy, not just of the Reserve Bank, but of all the regulators. And I, for one, believe that the FSDC, for one, which I believe, I don't recall, but I have not written about that. The FSDC will be the regulator for certain things, systemic regulator. I don't think systemic regulation, anything can be done by a committee. It's got to be done by institutions. So.
Dr. Subbarao, I know we are running out of time. Probably for my side, last question is this, which is very relevant now. We spoke about the appointment of deputy governors. I want to ask you about the appointment of governors. Your book had reference that how you got appointed.
Yeah.
You spoke about that call from Chidambaram, and on your way to overseas trip in the evening, you dropped in at his house. He came out, saw you at the parking lot. It's very similar what Kaushik Basu also wrote when he got the CEA governor. And then how you called up Rakesh Mohan. He said, Rakesh, don't feel bad. I have been roped in, etc., etc. And then after 3 years, you said, I told Raghu that I am not, this 2 years, I am not looking beyond that, so he can prepare his future action, etc., etc. So, this gives a sort of thing, it's a little cozy club among a few people, you decide who will be the governor and etc. Is it, am I right in saying this, or should we go the Bank of England way, like you actually advertise it and bureaucrat, technocrat, economist apply for it and you choose through a selection
Fortunately,
process?
I don't have to make a decision on that.
So what should be the right way of appointing,
No,
choosing
but
a governor?
I think you are confusing things. Potential candidates are people interested in the job or people who are in the shortlist talking to each other. It's a different matter from the procedure for appointing the governor. Okay, like if the editorship of the Economic Times opens up, I'm sure that some of you people will talk about it with each other and say who is going, who is in the run, and are you interested and all that. Similarly, there might be some people who are potential candidates for the governorship who might talk. It doesn't mean that the selection process in any way is influenced. Like last week, there was, I think Subir had tea with Raghu, and all of you media wrote that Subir is the next governor. They just had tea because Subir had just come. So I don't think that you should read too much into that. Okay. But about the process of
what should be
appointing governor, I've not thought about it. I'm a creature of the system, so I tend to believe that what we have is okay. After all, in 80 years, they've appointed reasonable people as governors. I was a bit hesitant to say that. I was talking about myself, but yeah. So I think our system is quite tested, and you can go ahead and trust it.
Okay. Well, then may I take the last question, since we are out of time. So once again, actually, to end where we began, When you were in the reserve, in the finance ministry or outside the Reserve Bank, did you think that the Reserve Bank is an intellectually arrogant institution? Was there a sense that they said, okay, you all don't understand, these are complex things?
No, I didn't get that sense. But I did get the sense that they have a narrow domain, okay, and that they suffer from breadth, and the Reserve Bank will benefit from looking beyond the tunnel. Yes, that I did. But within that, then I didn't get the sense of, you're talking about personality traits. I'm talking about
no, I'm talking about an institutional trait.
Yeah.
That, you try to mess with them and they say, you don't understand this, we know this better.
No, I don't think so. On the other hand, I thought they were quite differential.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to pose that to the other outsider to Reserve Bank. When you were a commercial banker, Mr. Mundra, did you get the feeling that these guys don't listen, yaar?
I would like to, coming back to your question, I think one important thing is, and mentioned earlier also, that every place you go, there is a dharma. And you get converted to dharma. In fact, first of all, I am really thankful to you for reminding me that I am not from RBI. I forgot it very fast. Soon after coming to RBI, I forgot it.
See, the technocrats converted you. Anyway.
Other thing I would, on a serious note, some of the things which you mentioned. See, we should all appreciate that RBI is an organization which is not driven top down. RBI functions largely bottoms up.
Oh.
Okay. So, whenever there are any policy issues or issues like this, and on a little lighter note, finally that green sheet comes to you. It carries not less than 7 to 8 initials on it and some full signatures. So after a lot of thought and input, something comes. Until and unless there are very specific reasons to overturn, it will not happen. And as mentioned, there would be a different viewpoint when you come to the organization for looking at the same thing. And finally, I would say why you should be so surprised. You must have seen that the same person when sitting on the treasury benches have one opinion, and when they move to the other side, they have different opinion.
Oh, I thought RBI will be above that. Okay, let me toss this question to someone who I'm sure is going to give a very, very candid answer. Chanda Kochar, do you think the Reserve Bank is guilty of not listening, just being intellectually arrogant?
You've crossed your time limit already, and I'm here as a spectator. I want to enjoy the show.
Governor, do you get that feeling? Did you get that feeling?
No, I think Chanda had the right answer.
Okay, actually, now Dr. Subbarao is open to questioning from the audience. The press has ragged him enough, so perhaps non-press questions. Ajit Radade.
Thank you very much. Wonderful session. I'm very happy I was here today. I wanted to just say two things. One is I want to quote Dr. Subbarao because this is something I like to quote often, and a question for him. One quote is that I was present in that meeting, and there were a lot of these people from the quote-unquote pink press and the media. He said, I get calls morning and evening to cut interest rates and cut interest rates and cut interest rates. Nobody has made a call or made pressure on me to say, please increase interest rates. Because when I talk to my mother or when I talk to anybody else, they said they are happy when interest rates go because they get more fixed deposit, bank rates. So this is something he said at more than one occasion, and that's really stuck with me, that there's really no voice for the large number of people who actually perhaps depend on higher interest rates. The question to you, Mr. Subbarao, and this is I'm fishing for some gossipy quote from you. Would you say that I would have done something differently? I know it's too soon, it's just 3 years ago, but is there something that you would have done differently?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Actually, I wanted to have a chapter in my book, what would you have done differently? And some people who are helping me with the peer review said, don't do that. Because the headlines will be Subbarao regrets. That will be series of, for 1 month they'll write every day what I've regretted doing, okay, nothing else. So and some people of peer review told me that, look, you have written everywhere where you could have done things differently, don't have a chapter on it. That I think was good advice. But I have written everywhere what I would have done differently. The question is, Would you have done anything differently with hindsight? Yes, lots of things. For example, not earning the moniker of baby step Subbarao, if I knew the recovery was a sharp V-shaped recovery, certainly we would have raised rates more aggressively. Or not cut by 50 basis points in April 2012, if indeed inflation number was really as low as it later turned out to be, or it's not as low as it turned out to be in real time. So with the benefit of hindsight, lots of things.
Or buying rupee, possibly. Buying rupee from the
Buying rupee,
dollar
no,
from the
doesn't fall into that category, no. Okay, that's, I have a different excuse for that, but not this excuse. Okay, but within the same universe of knowledge in real time, probably nothing you would have done differently, except probably I would have focused more on communication. Every governor has a problem with communication. Some veteran governors we've seen, Bernanke with taper tantrums, we saw. Today is the 12th of August, right? 14th of August last year, we saw the People's Bank of China tweak their market peg and they got into problems. I saw that statement. I thought it was absolutely plain English, but people saw messages behind that plain English, and the financial markets around the world went topsy-turvy. So every governor has a problem with communication, but I would have focused more on communication, because predicting market reaction to what you're doing is very difficult. But Tamil rupee, I have a different excuse for that. I don't think I would have done anything.
RBI does not intervene unless there is a level of volatility.
That too.
I'm talking about the criticism that was leveled against you, that you did not buy when
See, first of all, there is no definition of volatility. There is no measure of volatility. You say we intervene when there is excess volatility. What is excess, we do not know. Besides, I believe that every time you start intervening, if the exchange rate moves, there is a moral hazard. Your corporates are never prepared for managing exchange rate, and the market will always think that you're targeting an exchange rate. I think we should be quite sparing about intervening about exchange rate.
Governor, you have an opinion on that?
When he becomes ex-governor.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody else?
Alpana has a question.
Alpana has a suggestion.
Thank you for the very candid discussion. May I now request Governor Rajan to give the closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Let me first thank Governor Subbarao for coming here and giving us a sense of what his book was about. I read an early draft of the book and I was just taken by how thoughtful it was about his experiences, but also written in a very humble fashion. Most of these books by ex-technocrats or technocrats who held very senior positions is, here's how I save the world. And Dr. Subbarao's book was, here is more how I understood the world that I was going into, and how then I took my actions. But very revealing about some of the dilemmas that face central bankers and how they make decisions there. And I think, you heard a lot today. Given that this is a slow week for news about central banks, I mean, I think I said something like no comment, and it made national headlines. So if news is so slow, perhaps you got enough from this conversation. I thought, however, I'd sort of end by giving an example of some of the difficulties that we face and how everything becomes so clear in hindsight. Okay? And what I want to talk about is, I overlapped with Dr. Subbarao for about 20 days when I came in as an officer on special duty. And if you remember, those were the days when we were discussing daily what new thing to deal with the taper tantrum. And I was coming in from the finance ministry. There were a lot of people here. And this was a subject of daily conversation. The rupee was moving 1.5% on a daily basis. And people may remember how volatile things were. people predicting rupee would hit 100 by the end of the year. Different investment banks were competing with each other to give more and more alarming predictions. And one of the things I decided early on was that we needed to change the narrative. And so I spent my time going from office to office in the RBI, asking people, give me something you're working on, something that's interesting that we can do, we can announce, we can do quickly. And of course, every office I went to, they had something, and I jotted it down, and we decided that we'd do that. Now, amongst the sort of things we proposed to do, however, there was one that I found completely idiotic. I thought this was a terrible, terrible thing to do, which was a proposal which came from the bankers, which was give us a 3.5% swap deal on foreign exchange swaps, and basically give us a 3.5% subsidy, you'll have a great deal. We'll bring in money from outside, and that'll be fantastic. A whole lot of money will pour in. And I said, 3.5%? What kind of money are you talking about? $10 billion. So $10 billion at 3.5%, think of the subsidy outgo that we would be paying in order to get that. So I thought this is the bankers coming in again with one of the sweet deals which will help them. They'll go out and raise the money, they'll get fantastic bonuses, and we'll end up paying for it. So when they came to me in the finance ministry with this idea, I sort of sent them with a flea in their ear saying it doesn't make any sense. But the idea didn't go away. It was circulating. And then when we came to the RBI, it was posed once again here. And I remember sitting with Khan, with Vijay Bhaskar, with Padmanabhan, and these serious people said, well, maybe we should start thinking about it seriously, because we are in a little bit of a difficult situation. And Governor Subbarao encouraged the process. And the finance ministry was very gung-ho about it. This is one of those situations where the finance ministry actually took the lead and was pushing the idea. And so, we started thinking about it. And I think what convinced us finally was that the cost would have to be paid out only if a lot of money came in. If a lot of money came in, but if a lot of money came in, the currency would be bolstered. And as a result, the cost would be much less. So there's an endogenous aspect to this. I think Malingam was also in on the conversations then. There's an endogenous aspect to it. And also from a risk management perspective, if you think about it, the cost if we had to pay out would be in the order of 10, 20,000 crores. Big money. But think of having a stronger currency relative to an undervalued rate of about 3 rupees or 4 rupees. Multiply by $400 billion in imports. That would mean 1.6 trillion rupees in savings if we only stabilize the currency. 1.6 trillion per year. So from a cost benefit analysis also, first there was an endogenous element to it which would be good. From a cost benefit analysis, it would probably save us a lot of money if it worked. And so then the question was, how much of a subsidy do we give? Do we go with the 3.5 that the bankers are saying, or do we nickel and dime? And again, here the thing was, okay, let's take the risk. Let's give them what they want. Let's see how much comes in. Maybe it's 5 or 10 billion. And as Khan said the other day, when we actually announced it, the ultimate number was closer to 30 billion. But the point is that it wasn't at all clear when we thought about this that it would succeed. And it was, in my view, the worst of the ideas we had on the table. And so on the morning that I was going to take over, I went to Dr. Subbarao and said, would you like to announce it? He was gracious enough at that point to say, no, you go ahead. And now I get the credit for that idea, which actually I did not neither invented nor actually believed in, but was taken. Ultimately, I decided we had to do it. It was an important idea. We had to try it because we were in a situation where we had to try something to change the narrative. And ultimately, it made money. Ultimately, we have made money from that swap deal. But now, of course, it seems as if it was all very clear. It seems that, this was a brilliant idea that we should have, we thought about it, we did it, and people forget that at that time, and certainly I think if you talk to RBI insiders, you will say there was a lot of uncertainty about this and whether it should be done. So when we write the narrative of these kinds of events, we tend to look back and look at it linearly. But in reality, there's a whole lot of uncertainty, of confusion. And I think one of the things Dr. Subbarao has done very nicely in the book is talked about the uncertainties, about the confusion, about the various forces impinging, and saying that we don't have a clear line. It's only history which tells us what the clear line was. At that time, we don't really see it. So it's great that this book is written, and I think it'll inform generations of policymakers in the future. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Lata. Thank you very much, Kamal, for coming and doing this here. Thank you.